Why do we sleep? Why humans, arguably the most smartest species on Earth, spend one third of their life unconscious, vulnerable doing absolutely nothing. Think about it. Sleep makes us blind, still, and defenseless. In a world full of predators, diseases, enemies, and danger, nature still forces us to lie down for hours and hours after every single day. If evolution was supposed to optimize life, why should it leave behind something so obviously dangerous for the entire species? Today, we're going to trace the origin of this strange behavior of all the way back, not just to early animals, not just to the first multicellular organism, but to the first cell on Earth, billions of years ago. This is the story of how sleep begins, and why it might be the biggest bug of the entire history of evolution. Billions of years before humans existed, before animals had brains or bodies, before anything swam or crawled, the Earth was a chemically violent planet. There was no oxygen in the atmosphere. Life consists only of tiny cells drifting in oceans filled with methane, ammonia, and hydrogen sulfide. Then, evolution invented something new, a group of bacteria, ancestors of modern cyanobacteria, developed a revolutionary trick. They learned to use sunlight to split water molecules. This created food, but it also releases a byproduct, something extremely dangerous and deadly and toxic for life: oxygen. For modern life, oxygen is good. It is the source of our energy. But for ancient life, oxygen simply means death. Because under sunlight, oxygen forms highly reactive molecules like peroxide, which can tear apart DNA, proteins, and cell membranes. A single afternoon of bright sunlight could mean mass death in the ocean surface layer. So early microbes learn to predict the pattern: danger during the day and safe at night. The daily survival cycle becomes the first primitive circadian rhythm. It wasn't about sleep at all. It wasn't about rest. It was only about surviving or not dying. Cells begin building internal timers. Proteins that damage then repair themselves every 24 hours to prepare for oxygen spikes. This was the seed of what could eventually become sleep. After millions of years, this cyanobacteria releases so much oxygen that the planet itself changed. Around 2.4 billion years ago, oxygen flooded the atmosphere at an event we call the Great Oxidation Event. More than 99% of life simply dies. Only organisms that evolves protection against oxygen and the daily rhythm that manages it survived. The survivors inherited the world where the oxygen was everywhere, the day-night cycle was permanent, and timing your chemistry was essentially important. So timing becomes a fundamental feature of life. Even today, nearly every single cell in your body contains a molecular 24-hour clock passes down from these ancient survivors. But here's the twist. These early rhythms were not sleep. They were circadian cycles, biochemical oscillations, basically. Sleep would come much later. For billions of years, life had no brain, no nerves, no real behaviors. But once multicellular creatures appeared, everything changed. Organisms grow specialized cells. They need to coordinate digestion, movement, repair, and reproduction. And oxygen was both the molecule that powered energy and the molecule that causes damage. To survive this balancing act, evolution created two-mode system. So there's one mode, the active mode, where the organism just moves around, they eat, they fight around, they reproduce, high energy, high oxygen use. And the second mode is the repairing mode. They shut down themselves, they clean up all the toxic byproducts of oxygen, fixes the DNA, rebuild proteins, reorganize synapses. This second mode is the ancestor of sleep, but it still wasn't sleep as we know it yet. Early animals entered rhythmic state to reduce activity, what scientists called rest. Jellyfish rest, worms rest, even creatures without a brain shows rest-wake cycles. Why? Because the circadian program demanded period of metabolic cooldowns. But as nervous system grows more and more complex, the rest transformed into something even more stranger and more dangerous. When the first brain appeared, evolution accidentally created a new problem. Neurons are expensive in terms of energy consumption. They need huge amounts of energy. They produce toxic byproducts a lot more than other parts of the body. So they rely on delicate electrical balance. And unlike other cells, neurons can't simply shut down one by one for repair, because brain need coordination to function. You can't expect that half of your brain is effectively dead and you can still move around and they're just repairing themselves. No, the brain just doesn't work that way. It's either fully awake or fully asleep. So evolution invented a shocking solution. What if the entire organism just shut down at the same time? A full system maintenance mode. The earliest brain-based animal enters unified inactive state, proto-sleep. And once this pattern works, evolution locked it in, and it becomes impossible to remove. Sleep became scheduled reboot of the nervous system. But evolution did not stop just there. Humans have one of the most complicated sleep systems on Earth. REM sleep, deep slow wave sleep, memory consolidation, synaptic pruning, chemical cleansing, hormonal regulation, emotional balancing, learning integration, all this kind of stuff. Every night, your brain performs a complete biochemical software update. This is both powerful and terrifyingly fragile. You miss one night of sleep and everything just kind of falls apart. Your memory collapses, emotional control gets weaker, immune functions drop, your metabolism breaks down too, your reaction time gets slower, and the risk of getting diseases increases dramatically. No matter how much we train, think, evolve, or adapt, we are still slaves to sleep. We cannot escape this maintenance scheduler coded into our cell 2 billion years ago. And this brings us to the final question. If evolution is about survival, why didn't natural selection remove sleep? Why not evolve an animal that never needed to turn off? Well, because evolution has tried it multiple times, but every attempt has failed. Because sleep is not a choice. It is actually an inevitable consequence of complexity. The more complex a nervous system becomes, the more maintenance it requires. And the best way, perhaps the only way to maintain a complex brain, is periodically turn it off. Sleep is not a feature. Sleep is actually a patch, a workaround, a desperate compromise forced by chemistry. It is the biggest bug of the history of life, a bug so deep in our code that we cannot remove it because it is one of the most fundamental functions in our code. And if we remove that, it breaks the entire system. So that's why even today, after 4 billion years of evolution, after the evolution of city, science, computer, and space travel, we still collapse into unconsciousness every single night. Simply because 2 million years ago, tiny bacteria learned how to use sunlight and poison the world with oxygen. And the cells that survives build the 24-hour rhythm, and the animal that evolves from those cells built a brain that needed repair. And human that inherited all of this still struggle with the same ancient cycle. And that is why we sleep. Because evolution never fixed the bug, it simply learned to live with it. Thank you for watching this video. Hope you have a wonderful day. See you on the next one.